Pastor Mark Burns is running for office, so he's been doing as many public appearances as he could possibly fit in lately. This is him on screen. If you're unfamiliar, I've talked about him a couple of times, but he's had some extra disturbing stuff to say recently. Matter of fact, at the moment that this is being filmed, his primary hasn't taken place. I'm going to insert the results of his primary right here in post-editing so that you guys know, because by the time this releases, we'll have the answer. Looks like Mark Burns lost his primary. He got 23.8% of the vote, or 11,183 votes in the district. William Timmons will be going to the election in November. He won 52.7%, or 24,751 votes. Either way, no matter how this turns out, whether he won or lost, the fact is, this guy has garnered a ton of public attention for a lot of disturbing stuff, a lot of disturbing views that he's espoused recently. And the fact that we have people running for office getting this much attention off of these ideas is concerning in its own right. So I feel even if he lost the primary, it's still worthy of covering, whether he wins or loses. Before we talk about Mark Burns, I have to introduce you to the host of the show that he went on in one of the clips that we're going to be talking about. He went on Lauren Witzke's show. Lauren Witzke is this woman here on the right. Lauren Witzke was a congressional candidate in 2020, but she lost her election. She won the primary against James DiMartino, but lost the general election. Of course, she's running in the Republican Party. She's running for the U.S. Senate to represent Delaware. She was a co-host on True News with Rick Wiles.
This is a global coup d'etat by the most evil cabal of people on the planet in the history of mankind. And if it is not stopped in the very near future, they will win. That's what's at stake, control of the world. They're putting eggs in people's bodies. If you didn't see yesterday's True News, you need to watch it. It's an egg that hatches into a synthetic parasite and grows inside your body.
I don't know if you guys remember that guy, but he has some nutty ideas of his own. Anyway, it's a right-wing, white supremacist, extremist media outlet, basically. All these people, they're all white supremacist, neo-Nazi types of people. I'm not being hyperbolic with that. I never use hyperbole when it comes to neo-Nazis if I can help it. She is a full-blown white supremacist neo-Nazi. So I just wanted to introduce you to a couple of her more deranged, bizarre ideas, and then we're going to talk about the interview that she did with Mark Burns. This is on her current show or podcast that she does currently, now that she's left True News with Rick Wiles. Listen to what she had to say. This came out February 23rd, 2022, days after Putin launched the war against Ukraine. She says this about Putin.
Here's the deal also, Russia is a Christian nationalist nation. They're actually Orthodox Christian. I'm Russian Orthodox. So, I actually support Putin's right to protect his people and always put his people first, but also protect their Christian values.
So Putin launches a war against Ukraine, a morally depraved move by all accounts. The entire world turned against him for doing such a heinous, disturbing thing, right? And we were right in the thick of it at this moment. February 23rd, just days after the war started, she comes out and she says she's praising Putin. Like days after. She's saying this is great. She loves the guy. She's proud of him for defending his Christian nationalist state. It's just absolutely disturbing stuff. We're 14 seconds into this video and I'm already disturbed by what she's saying. U.S. Senate candidate in 2020 and is now interviewing and agreeing with a current congressional candidate, Mark Burns.
Well, first, but also protect their Christian values. I identify more with with Putin's Christian values than I do with Joe Biden. There is that. There is that there. Christian nationalist countries also are a threat to the global regime.
That is disturbing stuff. There is no way around that. That is absolutely disturbing stuff. So that should give you an idea of who she is and what she believes and who we're dealing with now. Here's another clip with Lauren Witzke. Listen to this one. This is establishing her white supremacist views.
White Christian males or white straight males are the most persecuted class demographic in the United States of America right now, especially in the workforce. The anti-white system that advocates for us, like people like us, to not have a voice, to not have any rights, like kind of considering us like second-class citizens that don't deserve rights is what they kind of try to treat us as.
What kind of delusional world do you have to live in to actually argue that white people are the persecuted minority in the United States? Honestly, what kind of a delusional world does this person live in?
This is what they kind of try to treat us as. They think that the system, the anti-white system, is going to spare them too, and it is not. This anti-white system, it's coming for all of us. People are starting to notice more and more that every commercial is trying to push some kind of degeneracy on you, something anti-white on you if you don't notice. If you haven't noticed, I mean, everybody's starting to notice. It's all part of a giant humiliation ritual. That's what it was when they took down our historical monuments. It was a humiliation ritual.
So yeah, that's Lauren Witzke. She lives in a delusional world. I'm not being hyperbolic here. If that doesn't kick it over the edge for you, listen to this one. This one just came out early June 2022.
Look, I'm not against theocracy or authoritarianism if it's coming from God. Like, God, for the most part, it's not a democracy in heaven. All right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I mean, we saw what happened with democracy. They had the choice between Barabbas and Jesus.
Yeah. They're like, give us like, Barabbas. Okay, the murderer.
So they seem to be in favor of authoritarianism on earth because they're in favor of it in heaven. Let's just buy into their weird little ideology for a moment. God is supposed to be perfect, right? Men are not perfect. That's why, even in their ideology, an authoritarian regime would work hypothetically because God is leading it. Humans are corrupt. Humans are not perfect. Humans look for every opportunity to take for themselves. That is why authoritarianism doesn't work, or one of the many reasons why it doesn't work here. That just flies right over her head. So anyway, that's Lauren Witzke, if you were curious. So she has Mark Burns on her show recently. I want to introduce you to Mark Burns. Let me just throw some of Mark Burns' ideas at you before we get into the latest clip. This is mid-November 2021. Check this one out.
I'm excited about the growing movement, especially here in the 4th District of South Carolina, of people who are identifying themselves as just Christian conservatives, right? We got to take it back to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I believe the people here in the 4th District of South Carolina are getting that. It's not just about being Republicans. It's about being a conservative Christian who believes this is a Christian nation.
You just want to say it's not a Christian nation in any stretch of the imagination.
And any policy that is contrary to the word of God, we need to remove it from mainstream America and make it illegal.
Do I even need to point out the fact that the First Amendment contradicts the First Commandment? Freedom of speech and freedom of religion are not acceptable according to Bible standards. You would have to basically erase the entire Constitution. But that's honestly no joke. That's what he wants to do. That's what these people want to do. They're called dominionists, and they have the intention to replace the Constitution with the Ten Commandments. Seriously. They really do. So that's who Mark Burns is. There's one more clip that I wanted to watch to lay a little bit of groundwork, to give you a little more information about him. This one was mid-March 2022. Listen to this one.
I'm going to tell you right now, David, when I'm elected, I am going to help formulate and re-energize a committee called HUAC. HUAC is the
House Un-American Activities Committee is what it is. And we're going to be talking about that in a minute.
Is the House of Un-American Activities Committee. This is a committee. It is not a new committee. It was a committee that was during the time that existed in the 40s and the 50s, but it's a committee that is sole purpose is to identify Americans, media, elected officials who are doing un-American activities and to hold them for treason here in America.
I don't know if you've ever read about McCarthyism, but that's what he's talking about. During the era of McCarthyism, that's when the House Un-American Activities Committee existed. They were looking for anybody who might possibly have any kind of communist or socialist sympathies, and they were charging them with crimes. They were losing their jobs. They're following them around and harassing them and all kinds of stuff. It got very, very ugly. Nobody actually wants to go back to that time, except this guy. This guy does. He wants to restart the House Un-American Activities Committee, and he wants to replace the Constitution with the Ten Commandments. And he's running for Congress. Check out this clip, early June 2022. It's a newer one. He's talking about something completely unrelated, and then he decides to dive into LGBT issues.
The LGBT, transgender, grooming our children's minds is a national security threat because it is ultimately designed to destabilize the republic we call the United States of America. That's why when I'm elected, I don't want to just vote. I want to start holding people accountable for treason.
So you were wondering who he intended to go after with the House Un-American Activities Committee? LGBT people. Anybody from the gay or trans community, anybody that he disagrees with, basically. Anyone who disagrees with him ideologically, politically, or religiously is un-American and deserves to go to prison and to be charged with treason. That's where his head's at. And he's running for Congress. Whether he won or not is irrelevant. We have people in this country who have a real shot at winning, who have ideas like this.
I want to start holding people accountable for treason to the Constitution. I am going to push to reenact HUAC. HUAC is the House of Un-American Activities Committee. It was a real committee that was formulated back in the 50s, and it's a committee that we should reenact that starts holding these people accountable for treason. We need to hold people for treason, start having some public hearings, and start executing people who are found guilty for their treasonous acts against the Constitution of the United States of America, just like they did back in 1776.
And there's Lauren Witzke clapping. She's clapping for it. There was a pastor recently from Steadfast Baptist Church in Texas, I believe. He's a member of the NIFB. Probably heard the news about this guy. I forget his name. Something A-W-E-S. Awes? Or something. I don't even know how you'd pronounce a last name like that. But anyway, this pastor said something very similar. That got all kinds of attention in the media. It blew up. Went absolutely nuts. Everybody's talking about it. Newsweek and all over the place. That's what this guy just said. He didn't use those very specific words. Didn't use that verbiage. But listen one more time to the very end of this.
No, we need to hold people for treason, start having some public hearings, and start executing people who are found guilty for their treasonous acts.
Who's going to be guilty of treason in his mind?
The LGBT, transgender, grooming our children's minds is a national security threat because it is ultimately designed to destabilize the republic. I want to start holding people accountable for treason.
So that's his plan for LGBT allies. Allies is who he's talking about. Not just the LGBT people. Just people who are supportive of it. What does he have in mind for the actual members of the community, is my question. Truly disturbing stuff. On the note of McCarthyism, I found this clip a while back. There's a guy named Robert J. Lifton, and he wrote a book called Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism. That was the name of it. Back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s era, during the McCarthy era, the Chinese were capturing Americans and basically doing brainwashing experiments on them. And this is all well understood, well documented, and Robert J. Lifton's book talks about it. It was like foundational work in the area of cult research and brainwashing research. Because after the Chinese put these Americans in this prison camp, you get people coming out saying this. Watch this. This is a real video of real Americans coming out of a Chinese prison camp.
My name is Harold Webb from West Palm Beach, Florida. My name is Aaron Wilson from Urania, Louisiana. This is a very happy moment for me, for now I am free from McCarthyism. Friends, the only way to stop fascism in America is to do as I have done. Stand up and fight for our rights.
My name is Louis Griggs, and my home is at Jacksonville, Texas. I stayed behind to escape the red bait of McCarthy, and to assure that I'll never again have to fight in another unjust war as I did in Korea. Even if I had wanted repatriation, the fates of Dickinson and Batchelor would have stopped me.
My name is Richard Tennyson. I live in Alden, Minnesota. People who hate war and stand up for their beliefs are faced with McCarthy and his fascist up-control House Un-American Activities Committee.
There's a mention, the House Un-American Activities Committee. That was the source of a lot of the McCarthyism. How did these people get to this point? How did they get brainwashed? It's a really fascinating read, his book, Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism. Robert Cialdini talks about it in his book called Influence also. Stephen Hassan has talked about it in his book, Combating Cult Mind Control. Specifically about the Chinese prisoners of war. And I've talked about it in a video. I think it's called How Cults Rewire Your Brain. It's on my main channel. I even play this video in it. But anyway, for the record, these people were fully brainwashed by the Chinese. There's really no basis for them to... I mean, these were like bleed red, white, and blue patriots who fought in a war for America. You know, it was fully brainwashing that brought them to this point. But that is the time that Mark Burns wants to go back to. That's the era. He likes that. He wants it. That was a really bad time. It really was. McCarthyism was absolutely terrible. And he wants to bring us back to that time. He wants to bring us back to that era. That is disturbing stuff. And what's even more disturbing is the idea that the fact that he's pushing for it may mean that he has some influence over how it's formed and who they'll target and things like that. I mean, it seems a little bit far-fetched, but I honestly didn't expect to get Donald Trump as a president in the first place. I never underestimate these people anymore. Not since 2016. I joked about Trump being president in 2015, and then 2016 happened. Do not underestimate these people. Don't underestimate how an ideology spreads. He may not get into Congress. He may not. But he's moving the Overton window that much further to the right. He's moving the window of acceptable public discourse that much further to the right every time he talks about this. So here's my question. Is the guy a true believer, or is he just trying to get attention? Either way, the damage is done. He's harming society with what he says and what he does. He is making his ideas more acceptable to a wide audience just by saying it. Just by being a congressional candidate and coming out here and suggesting this stuff, he's making it more acceptable to a wider audience. So it really doesn't matter if he believes it or not. But does he? That's my question. Does he believe it? Or is he just trying to get votes? Wesley Oliver, would they replace the Supreme Court with pastors? Yeah. You know, I don't know that they'd have a Supreme Court. I mean, if we're talking replacing the Constitution, we're talking replacing the entire government with a Christian nationalist type of government. Just, it won't be America anymore. It will be a Christian nationalist state. That's their intent and their plan. No hyperbole. They say that. They specifically outline it. Lance Wallnau, Johnny Enlow, Mark Burns have all given specific, direct, explicit plans for their intentions to abolish the Constitution and replace it with the Ten Commandments. That's the plan. And Mark Burns agrees with this and is on board and wants to make it happen, wants to make it a reality.